Hello there and welcome back. We have a great panel now. We're going to look at how we can be more sustainable. And really, there's been so much going on and so many great discussions. And again, this is really what everybody's looking at. It's sustainability in the business. It's also about as we move towards a more sustainable energy future. So I think we have a lot to talk about here. And I'm absolutely delighted to welcome now Helen Hill joins us now. Helen is, of course, she's with Johnson Matthey, and she is looking after the whole Middle East and Africa region and India in regional strategy. So, Helen, great to see you. Lovely for you to join us. Thank you so much. Udo Huenger is joining us from BASF. He's the Vice President for the Middle East. We're delighted that we have him. And also the Vice President of Energy Transition for Baker Hughes, Allyson Book. So Allyson will be with us shortly. So let me perhaps, if I might, Helen, just get started with you. And really just let's have a look. We heard a lot from many of the other people this morning, I think, talking about, you know, how everything is in place and we're able to recruit people and it's a new dynamic environment out there. But it's great. We know maybe now how to recruit. And we're getting some women into the industry. But how do we keep them there? And, you know, how do we make sure that people realize that we want them for their career and we can offer a good career in this sector?
So I think the key thing is to have role models in senior leadership positions, because if women can see themselves in the senior leadership positions, that will encourage them to go for it. So this is something that I'm keen to do. This is one of the reasons why I'm speaking at this conference, and this is one of the reasons why I'm also a mentor.
And indeed, some of the great work, we've had a chat beforehand that you do. I mean, it's just, I can see how it's changing minds as well. And when we look at changing minds, and I suppose, you know, yes, being diverse in the workplace, but also, you know, what you love to talk about too is having diversity of thought. Talk to us a little bit more about that and why it's so important.
So for me, diversity of thought is so important when it's linked to innovation. So trying to achieve net zero, so the global problem, it's such a complex problem and there's such a range of solutions that in order to come up with these ideas and convert them into solutions, we need diversity of thought.
And I think very much, you know, we need diversity of thought, and that comes, you know, from, I guess, different people. Listening to Pierre earlier there, I mean, it was fascinating that he said that it took them such a long time, you know, to stop hiring kind of, you know, people who looked the same and really expand out. And the great surprise, and I think, you know, the great success that it was when they did that, and then even expand out to bring women in board. So again, it's looking, I suppose, our workplace should reflect, you know, our life. And, you know, it's a diverse world out there. We really need to be looking further than, you know, just basic qualifications. What do you think?
Yes, I think so. It's there's different aspects of this. So like some of the speakers have already said in this conference, it's looking at the company's values and the company's brand and making sure that a wider group of people see this, so that we don't just go to the same universities to recruit people, that we perhaps get more than just engineers and chemists to come and work for Johnson Matthey. So it's looking at that side of it. But it's also looking at people moving to different parts of the business. So say we've got some skills in one area and then we've got another area where we're focusing on the energy transition, then we have to look at the talent across the company and maybe move people around so that we can discuss our ideas and find the answers to these complex problems.
And again, I think this is one of the wonderful advantages of being part of an international company, because you have people around the world and you have people that you can actually, you know, move to different areas as well. But also you talk about going, you know, to different universities and that, but also I believe you're reaching out maybe at a younger age, because we all make our minds up, I suppose, at a certain time, whether we like it or not. In fact, we make them up at a time when we're probably least informed. You know, we're very young and we just think, well, we like this at the moment, so we're going to go that way. So maybe this needs to be sort of rethought as well.
Yeah, so despite the title that I have for my role, I'm based at Johnson Matthey's site on Teesside in the UK. We have a number of outreach programs linked to the local community, so with primary age children, high school age children, and college age. So this is where we encourage them to come and see what we do, meet some real scientists and engineers. So we do some experiments and demonstrations to show them that science and engineering is fun. And then as the young people get older, then we get them more involved. So they would do the experiments. That would be the next stage. And then at the college age, so the 16 to 18-year-olds, they would do a project. So like a real project, not just something that we've made up. So something that we would perhaps want our people to work on. And they learn through doing that project.
I think that's fascinating again. And it really shows, I think, also that the company has opened up. This probably, if you look back on the history, was probably not always the way. So again, even, positioning your role there, I think it's just so important to have that engagement. And I'm sure you're finding it very rewarding, and the company is also.
Yes, yeah.
Really, really powerful. So talk to me, though, about, making sure that we look at sustainable business. We look at the fact that this is a business that we want to carry on, even though we're in the energy transition. We want to make sure that people's jobs are sustainable. We want to make sure that people come to work and give us 100%. How do we achieve that, and how do you create that culture that people are happy to be there and people are being productive as well?
So just picking up on your point there, to me, there's a big link between how employees feel valued and how they feel engaged with the contribution that they give and therefore the performance. And obviously, if the employees are at 100% performance, then this is of value to the business. So we were talking about this yesterday when we had our preparation about bringing your whole self to work.
And I find this fascinating. I really do, because I don't know if I'm fully on board with you, but inspire us on this one.
So that's why I thought it would be good to talk about.
Remind me.
So bringing your whole self to work, I know I perform better if I can be myself, if I can talk to my colleagues about what's important to me. And if I'm not wasting energy on trying to be somebody else I'm not, or trying to fit in with the way that everyone else thinks like the standard engineer or project manager or sales manager needs to be, then I'm going to be 100% focused on contributing to my role, and therefore my performance is going to improve.
And do you think over the years that is something that companies are more open to, and they're a lot more welcoming of it now? Because I've talked to a few, and they seem to be doing great work in this area. But and again, big companies have the luxury to probably do this and put these. It's not a program, but just say that this is how you work. But is it possible that everybody can do this? And how would you encourage them to get started?
So to me, the starting point is awareness. So it's creating a comfortable and non-confrontational environment in small teams where you can share your experiences. There is no right and wrong. So looking at gender equality, it's if we can have small group conversations, it's making that group aware that there are barriers to gender equality. But it's also having the conversation that if people weren't aware, say in that group conversation, if people weren't aware of the barriers, it's them being curious and wanting to understand. And maybe also the second step being how they could help to remove those barriers.
Indeed, yes, and I can see the start. And again, I suppose it's about taking that chance. It's about taking that risk. And I think some companies like yourself who can demonstrate that it works, this is, it's almost a guarantee that's there. So they've nothing to lose.
Yeah, and I think it also fits in with. So if we have senior leaders or department managers who aren't sure how to start the conversation, or the way that the world is now, it's sometimes difficult to deal with all the change. So if we have people like myself that can come along and facilitate the conversation, this helps to link the department managers with their teams.
It is so true. It's so true. Having sometimes maybe at work could be the tough conversations as well that maybe some people don't want to. Stay with us, Helen. I want to move over and get Udo involved, and then we'll come back and have a quick wrap up at the end. And unfortunately, Allyson's not going to be able to join us, so sorry about that. But Udo, come and join us here. And, thank you so much for being with us. One of the areas I want to pick up even on what Helen was saying there is actually talk to me about diversity of thought. This is something that she brought up, and it's something we're hearing quite a bit about, I think, in this conversation too. So come back to me and, elaborate on that, particularly when it comes to what you're doing at BASF.
Thank you very much first for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I can tell you that you really hit the nail on the head. I mean, for us at BASF, it's sort of part of a bigger picture. We call it value to society. We don't want to really focus only on the economy, the economic part of our company. Of course, it's very important for our shareholders, and we will have a strong focus on that as well. But it's also how we actually interact with societies, and also how we look at the environment and protect the environment. And then we're talking sustainability, of course. And if you really want to take the whole society with you and support societies, you always will have to talk about diversity and inclusion. And here I want to really emphasize the inclusion part as well, because it's great to have diverse teams. If you don't include them, they will never be in a situation where they really feel confident. Helen actually said that as well, where they will really feel welcomed and open enough to share their thoughts. And then basically you have a diverse team, but you don't really get the output. We are living in a world, sustainability, zero carbon targets, 2030, 2050, that's a huge challenge for the industry. I mean, our industry is carbon-based, the energy sector is carbon-based, and really getting into a situation where you're carbon neutral is going to be a huge challenge. And you really need the best teams and the most creative ideas, out of the box thinking in the end, to really tackle these problems. We at BASF, we really believe if you don't have diversity of thought, and I mean, gender diversity is super important at BASF. We have a 30-30 target, which is, I think we are on a good track, and it's a great idea, and we need to follow through with it. But I also think that we shouldn't miss out on diversity of thought, because that's where you get the creative ideas, different viewpoints on topics, and so on. So I think it's actually the core of this whole diversity and inclusion topic, if you ask me personally.
So how do you actually bring those diverse teams together? I mean, you start in terms of recruitment by making sure, first of all, that the teams are diverse, and hopefully we're beginning to see a more diverse available workforce there, because we've got people qualified from around the world. And really, again, the benefits of an international company, it's so exciting that you do have, people around the world. But how do you start to build the right team that can be diverse and that can actually almost in a way challenge each other? I mean, there has to be a bit of permission granted there as well, to make sure you've got people who are going to come up with different ideas and maybe not always agree.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And that's a great question. I think it's even a bigger picture, because you can only form diverse teams if you really hire the right people and if there are enough people on the market. And if I look at engineers, we, of course, struggle to really find great engineers in the industry at the moment. I mean, we're not the only ones, everyone does. Finding female, just to go into the gender topic again, finding female engineers is even more challenging. So I think there are two sides of that. We need to really go out at an early stage and create a situation where all these diverse people actually also want to get into engineering or into chemistry or into whatever is out there, so that we actually have an attractiveness to all these different ways of education. And on the other side, we as a company, of course, also need to attract these people. And then we are basically, from our standpoint, really looking into leadership, because you have to lead that through from the top. we have to induce a culture in the company that embraces this diversity. And we started last year where we actually sent, and that's a start only, we're going to do that with all our team members, the whole organization. We started with something that we call core leadership training. So we start with the senior executives, where we look at these biases. We look at how we actually operate. How do we, as senior executives, change our viewpoints? How do we have to challenge ourselves? We just had a session here in the Middle East where we talked about unconscious bias. There's so much in our heads that we're not even aware of. And there's what you know and there's what you don't know, right? And I think this part where we are not aware that we're short.
That's even the tougher bit, huh? What you don't.
Exactly. How can you address something that you're not even aware of, right? So I think it's really important that we as a leadership create that openness, that people and our team members, our partners in business, come to us and tell us, look, you have a weak spot here. And I would wish that you address that, right? And that's the environment that we have to create. And that's the one side. And yeah, as I said, you have to bring people in. There is one story that I like. I actually, of course, we do some research when you go into these panel sessions. And I was looking at one of my colleagues, and she is great. She's in manufacturing, interestingly. But I didn't know that story. I found that on our own webpage. Elizabeth Monroe, she is a Beaumont site manager in BASF. And she told the story how she actually came into manufacturing. And what happened to her was her dad was working at a chemical plant, and there was this bring your kids to work day. And he brought his daughter, took her into the site, showed her around the production site, and she got fascinated by the infrastructure, the equipment, and everything that you have on this site. So at that point in time, she decided to actually go into engineering, because that's fascinating what I see here and what my dad does. And that's exactly, I think, what we need to do. We need role models. We need great leadership. We need to support the diversity, and then it's going to happen. Are we there?
Yeah.
Definitely not.
No, and just even, to pick up on what Helen was saying too, working on that level, I think it's so important. But again, a lovely story. Come back to the fact, and we have a question here, and I'll maybe tie it in together here. When we look at, the targets that BASF has set, you have set 30% of women, you mentioned it earlier there, you want to be in leadership by 2030, but also in terms of the broader sense, making sure there are more women in the workplace. Now, if I can tie that in with a question that came here also in terms of how do we get that culture of diversity and inclusion, I'm particularly looking at the Middle East here, because one of our viewers is saying that maybe that culture is not there, maybe it doesn't encourage it. So actually, how do you get people to, particularly in this area, to really pay better attention and to put this in action and to make it work?
Well, I have to admit that the comment, of course, is right. It's always the culture everywhere, by the way. Not in the Middle East. It's, also in Germany, in the US, it's always the culture that is the issue. So also here in the Middle East, the culture is the issue. What I believe, and you see that also here in the Middle East, if I look at the conferences that I go to, or high-level meetings that I go to with all the big players in Saudi, in the kingdom, and here also in the UAE, you see if the leadership implements the right governance and the right incentives and the right ideas and the vision of how they want to transform the country and the companies, then you see that you will actually also get more diversity into the workforce. And I have to admit that that's at least my impression. If I meet customers here in the UAE or in Saudi, oftentimes on a higher management level, you see more women than you actually sometimes do in the Western world. So I think, yes, culture is always a topic, but it's a company culture, it's a country's culture, and it's an issue everywhere. And we have to convert culture everywhere. It's not a Middle Eastern topic.
Yes, no, I think you're so right. And I think things are changing, and I think we have to look at that, support it, and maybe give it a little bit of a push, but without a doubt. I think we see it changing. And even at the LIWA's Awards, it was so lovely to talk to some of the inspiring, young graduates who are coming out of university with engineering degrees and hear them talk about, really they're that first group. So that has shifted. Okay, it's taken a long time and people can be impatient, but the fact that it is shifting, I think we actually have to help that along as well. But talk to me about the need for male support. And we heard this earlier, many people talking about it. We need male support, we need male championship, we need mentors, we need programs like that. How best to get that in action to make it work?
But I think that's essential to get that to work. If I look at how I got where I am, it's network. Where do you get your network from? I mean, you get to know people, or your mentors bring you into contact with different other people in the company, and that's how you actually build your own network. Yeah. Looking at our company, as I said, in leadership, we have at the moment, I look at the numbers that I don't say anything stupid. 24% senior executives are female. If I, as a woman, would look for a network, would I focus on the 24% or would I focus on the whole community? I would focus on the whole community. So I think it's really important that we, as we heard earlier, have role models that we can look up to. Super important. I think we need success stories for women senior executives that actually lead their way up and also see the impact that things change through that. Because I mean, if female leaders are just another male leader, we haven't reached nowhere. Yeah? So I think that's also important. We need networks. We need mentorship and coaching, and that applies to all of us. Yeah? But it applies always more to the community that is smaller. If I have a smaller community, they need more support that we can grow the community. That's pure statistics here. Yeah. So I think it's super crucial, and we need to implement also programs that actually support all of that. What we've done at BASF, we have a couple of programs. Starts with MBASF. It's like a mini MBA that we do here so that we can early on at university, at the big universities and the most prominent universities, successful universities in the Middle East, that we attract students. We got them through that program. They get to know our company. They get to know our leaders. 50% of the community there is women. So that we already get that share in, and that we early on identify the talents that we actually want to bring into the company. We have something called Women in Business, where we do mentoring and training. We do Women in Leadership, another program where we have coaching sessions with different people. And there's also a part where we have board members of BASF talking to our female talents so that they also get the impression what's really needed to be successful in the company. And then also getting the perspective, and we have 2 board members that are female. They're very different. Yeah? One is a chemist, one is an economist. From their competencies, they're very different, but also from their style, they're very different. And I think that is giving them an insight how the different views on how we actually want to lead the company into a certain direction, how that is impacting actually getting better results. And I think that is super important that we do these things.
I want to bring Helen back in here. We're going to have to wrap this up in just a couple of minutes, and just perhaps following on from what Udo has talked about there, when we look at that mentorship in the business and making sure, that people come together. And also, I suppose, I think how things have changed. A question that come in is, when we look at biases that maybe were there, how are they shifting? And what do you do about it? Because clearly you've all done something about it. Helen.
So, just picking up on the mentoring side, this is really important, and this isn't just something that women that can benefit from. It's something that everyone can benefit from. And I would say where I'm trying to focus on breaking down the barriers to gender equality, everything that I do with the employee resource group I'm involved in benefits everybody. So gender equality is like the stepping stone or the start on the road to true diversity and inclusion.
And again, I think it is about leading with example, without a doubt. A few questions in terms of, I suppose, around job opportunities in the industry. And again, it's, when people apply, what are you looking for when you look out there? Because now you have a new lens to look through, Udo, in many ways. You found that new lens. So what is it that will almost stand out to you when you're looking for new recruits in the industry? It's not simply just that engineering degree. Does it have to be a little wider and maybe signs of critical strategic thinking, something like that?
Yeah, I think that there is a complementary to what we have in the company that actually stands out for me in the real talent. We actually want to complement the workforce that we have. Yeah, and the real talents that we have to bring in are the ones with different viewpoints. Of course, the degree, we always have these questions: what's more important, the degree, the competencies? I think it's a bit of the combination of both. But you also need to look at what do we have and how do we complement it, and how do we actually create the bigger future? Yeah, and it has to fit in there like a puzzle piece.
Yes. Talk to me, Helen. I mean, when we look at, you've managed to make this change, I think, with Johnson Matthey, other companies can do it. Just before we close off, maybe take a minute if there were words of advice that you can offer to a company out there in terms of what can they put in place as perhaps the first steps to make sure that they're heading on the right road and the advantages that it will give them.
I think the first step on the road is awareness. So it's starting the conversation and having the comfortable environment to have the conversation, so people don't feel uncomfortable with saying the wrong thing. I would probably say that's perhaps a UK viewpoint, because I know a lot of my friends and my colleagues that I talk to are worried about saying the wrong thing and offending somebody. So if you can have a relaxed environment, then that's less of an issue.
No, and I think it's very much the same in so many other areas too. Nobody wants to insult, but you have to bring some issues to the table. And I mean, sometimes in the US too, I think, they can be, beyond politically correct, that perhaps people wouldn't dare talk about things. So there is, I think, need for that openness. So listening, I think it's very important. Udo, I'm going to give you the last word here in terms of helping other companies and people out there as they navigate, I suppose, for many people, a new direction in terms of how they're going to do business. Because without a doubt, we have arrived there, and those that don't willingly go are going to be brought kicking and screaming at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Or left behind.
Yeah, and if you want to survive in this business in the future and in the energy sector, sustainability is the name of the game. We want to create a world that our kids will live in. I mean, we're not creating that for us. I mean, we're going to be dead when this all kicks in, right? So we are creating a future for all the future generations. And the challenges are so big. If we don't tackle it now with the right teams, it's not going to happen. So look at it, hire the right people, form the right teams, take all these challenges heads on, and then we're all going to make it.
And we have to, yes, because there's only one direction, and I think we're all at least heading there now. So it is about working together and having that support. I really want to thank both of you so much. And again, really looking at, building a sustainable business, building a sustainable workforce, and again, making sure that we're all heading towards that sustainable future that we all need and have to put in place. So Helen Hill, thank you so much. And Udo, also, thank you for joining us too. It's been really great to have you both. And to our dear audience, we're going to keep looking at these questions, and I am going to try and fit more in for the next panel, because we'll be looking at how to de-stress, make sure that, again, we're all ready for what is almost there. I hope, in many areas we've had a bit of a pullback, but we're all getting ready for post-pandemic, and we have to look at the new future of how we work. So stay with us. We'll be back in just a minute.